And our next guest for this segment of Moments with Milak, I have Becky Han with me. I am super, super excited to have her here with us today. And just as a reminder, the purpose of these conversations is to share Indigenous perspectives, experiences, and thoughts. These perspectives are not my own. I'm looking to create awareness and support discussion amongst Indigenous peoples ourselves and Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples outside of these Zoom segments. So to get us kicked off, Becky, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. Atara Becky Han. I grew up in Arctic Bay, Nunavut, and that's where I spent my childhood. And for the last decade and a bit, I've been down south where I've been raising my family with my husband, and I play music, mainly from home, but I record stuff to share on social media, and 90% of it is in Inuktitut.
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah, I see comments quite a bit in regards to your music pushing for an album, coming out with an album. I've seen quite a few that's what people are looking for. But before we start really diving into things, maybe if you can just start by talking a little bit about how your interest in music really evolved and kind of took off. When was the time-ish where it was something that you started getting more passionate about?
Growing up back home, involved with church, I liked singing, like in the youth groups, and a few years after that, that kind of just died down a little until my husband got me my first guitar when our firstborn was almost a year old. So I was determined to start learning how to play it. So I went on YouTube and Google and I learned the basics, and that's when my interest like kind of peaked to create Inuktitut music that wasn't like readily available, especially online, especially being away from home. Like you don't have your daily radio stations and just music from home. So I was like, well, if I can't really find it, then maybe I can try to make it. And if people like it, they like it. And thankfully, they do. And as time goes on and I'm like getting more and more comfortable and like in my own skin and what I want to represent and what style of music I want to make, that pride in my culture just like it keeps growing, because that's a way for me to stay connected with home anyway. So we'll see like how big it can grow and where it's gonna go and take me, and I'll just keep creating and find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely being outside of homelands is something that sometimes is necessary for ourselves, but it's also nice to be able to keep connections in ways to our community, whether that's through language or food, or even if we pick up other practices in, outside of Inuit Nungangat. I think it's something that's continuously evolving and becoming more and more so, and it's really encouraging and empowering to see that. When you talk about your music, how would you describe it?
I don't know. That's like something that I've also tried to figure out, like what genre even is it? Like it's just chilled. It's like acoustic. I wouldn't necessarily call it like folk, but kanke, like acoustic and laid back.
That's something that has been consistent when I speak to Indigenous musicians and Indigenous artists, that they're often categorized as something that they wouldn't necessarily categorize themselves as, like folk music, indie folk, those kinds of words.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting even to have, to think about those kinds of things, that even within music and society and trends and all that kind of stuff, that there's still space that needs to be created for Indigenous peoples, and space to take up as Indigenous people see fit. And I think that that aspect is so important. I do want to take a step back though and talk more about language. I think the example that I have been using often is growing up on Susan Abdulkak, and for me, all those a lot of the English songs, listening to them later takes a little bit of while for me to remember, but the Inuktitut songs, I hear the melody and like instantly remember. Uh, how do you find writing and singing in Inuktitut compared to English? If you find any difference, really.
There is. I feel like there's so many layers that you could go into with Inuktitut. Because initially, when I started out trying to write in Inuktitut, when I first thought of it or trying to wrap my head around it, I always thought like Inuktitut is like so much more literal than English. Like it's like hard to try to describe certain things that you could be poetic about in English, but like no, there's ways to be poetic in Inuktitut, and I find it so much more beautiful when you do find like how to make those connections or comparisons and like write the story in our language that fellow Inuk can listen to, understand, and enjoy, and like relate. So I'm still learning, and that's like also one of the perks about singing in Inuktitut. Like I'll constantly be calling up my friends and my family, or like people on Facebook, like because I would forget certain words or phrases and the meaning. So I'm really grateful that Inuit are always so willing to lend a hand and like be helpful and just be supportive that way.
And speaking of language, and although I'm not fluent in Inuktitut, I think that there's different, it's like next level of meaning in everything, and that oftentimes what we perceive as smart is often society's idea of what smart is. It's that piece of paper, it's getting a degree, it's all those kinds of things. And when we talk about the importance of language, especially in Inuktitut, it's we're speaking to how individuals look at the world. It's not necessarily just I find a language difference. I find that it's a difference in how you perceive, how you feel, like those kinds of things can definitely come into play. You'd mentioned that you had been living down south for a number of years now. Moving away from home, what was that like for you?
It was a huge adjustment. And I like you, I still have my days where I struggle, especially during springtime, which is when back home is like, for me, like the perfect time to go camping because you still got your ice, but you can go ice fishing and like everything's just like waking back up and like from winter. But it's a big adjustment, and I try to stay connected however I can, whether that's daily chats with friends back home or like webcamming or calling mom and dad. And you find ways.
Absolutely. There are so many ways to be able to stay connected, and I think that your music has been a great way to be able to do that, along with sharing, along with interacting with other people, and teaching other people, and educating other Canadians that aren't aware as aware as Canadians should be about the First Peoples of this country. When we're looking at when we're looking at the current situation that we are in, when we're looking at new and creative ways to be able to share things. Is there anything in particular that you hope for the future of music, in particular for Inuit?
You were breaking up, so
See, love this virtual stuff. Always. We've been talking about the future and what that can look like, and we're in a really, really weird time. And what do you hope for the future of music for Inuit?
Well, I hope it keeps thriving, like it doesn't stop, especially like you said with Inuktitut. I hope the language itself like stays strong, and through that people keep paving new ways like in each genre, and to fill up these gaps in the music industry that we could like easily take up. And I hope it just keeps spreading and growing and like becomes the norm, and you could just turn on the radio station somewhere in southern Canada and like, oh, so and so from wherever in Nunavik or Nunavut. And I don't know, I just hope it keeps getting bigger.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that something that has been a common theme are the barriers in learning an instrument, having access to resources, having access to equipment, a studio space. Throughout the time in that your music has evolved, have there been any expected challenges or barriers that you had to get creative and get creative in discovering how to overcome those?
I'm sure there are definite like differences with musicians that are currently up north versus someone like me down south, because you do have a couple of your studios that are already set up in like in certain parts of Nunavut, especially like Inuktitut. Like you have your home studios there where you could get funding and you could just walk over and have your recording, versus someone like me down here where there's just a bit more planning to be had, not just with finding the right studio, finding the right this and that, but like trying to work around funding that's available to build an album. And yeah, I don't know.
I think there's so many obstacles and barriers that people don't realize for any artist, any musician to have to overcome. You know, I would never call myself an artist or a musician, but I have lived with them. I have really good friends, and the amount of hard work and passion it really, really does take to do it full time is
And it
huge.
is work. It takes work and dedication to like create, like it's like basically your baby that you have to create out of air, like out of nothing, and you're trying to create this thing that has been sitting inside of you that you want people to understand and see and show and be like, this is what I'm trying to say, like here it is, look at it. And yeah.
Absolutely. And with that, with steering away, I guess, from barriers and challenges and doing the 180, has your music taken you to places or given you opportunities to meet people that you wouldn't have expected? Can you give us a few examples of those opportunities or things that you have done?
One of the like one of the memorable ones for me would be when Tanya got me to open for her in Winnipeg. And this is when it feels like I just started coming out like as an artist. And so it came as like a huge shock and surprise, and like I was scared as heck because I look up to her so much. Like she's this powerful, like Inuk woman doing this and paving a brand new path for artists. So that was definitely like one of the bigger moments. And then I've had opportunities to go back to my territory, like various communities, to do shows. And hopefully in the future, like that'll be more plausible, because I would love that. That would be amazing to travel across our territory and just play Inuktitut music to Inuit.
Absolutely, and that's definitely something that a lot of people don't realize too. The prices for flights, hotels, for food are sky high. It's crazy. It takes a couple $1,000s to get into the territory, and to travel to communities, it's more and more money once it adds up. So I hope that once people become more aware, that those are some of the barriers that we can start breaking down, because Inuit should be able to perform for Inuit on our homelands.
Yes. Yep. Like for me, just me coming from, let's say, Ottawa to my hometown of Arctic Bay for a round trip is $4,000. Like, that's a lot. That's
For
a lot
just
of money.
one ticket, $4,000. It's not something that very many people are aware of. Speaking of hopes for the future, is there any hopes that what do you hope to see in your music path, if you will, in the future?
Album or 5 would be nice. Those are like, that is a possibility, and that is in my future. It's just a matter of when and how. But definitely that. And just hope like bringing music and playing music, especially up north, will be easier to access.
Absolutely. And just before we wrap up here, would you like to maybe sing us a bit of something, or play a little something to give us a taste of your music?
Sure, I could do like
Yay!
a verse, and it is in Inuktitut. This is called Kaukbat Tomorrow, and it's like one of my older songs.
Ah, I love it. Your voice always gives me goosebumps. You can't see, but I had them crawling down my neck. Oh, it's great.
And that's like the general like feel, I guess, of most of what I write.
I love it. It's very soothing. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. I really appreciate your time. I'm super excited for your future album whenever that comes out, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky.
Ivle.
Bye.